We're here again at Growth Without Barriers. I'm Andrew Sherman at Jones Day. I'm here with Karen Kerrigan of SPE Counsel. And we want to thank AT&T again for their years of corporate sponsorship of our webcast. We want to focus a little bit on the crowdfunding issue. We were both on a panel last week at the Impact with an E Summit. And one of the really exciting panels, I thought, not just because you and I were part of it, was this crowdfunding panel as it applies to entrepreneurship and as it applies to entrepreneurship education. Some of the panelists were just incredible, including the founder of one of the big crowdfunding platforms, Indiegogo.
Right. No, it really was. And actually my role was I got to kick the panel off and put some context to the panel. And what the panel was all about was crowdfunding and its role in entrepreneurship education. And you know what? It's going to play a huge role in entrepreneurship education. This was the point that I was making up on the Hill last year when we were lobbying for reforms to the Securities and Exchange Commission outdated rules that really prevented crowdfund investing, was that individuals are not only going to have access to capital through these platforms, but they're also going to have access to networks, to feedback, to advisors, and to just a whole network or ecosystem, if you will, of people that can really help their businesses grow,
right.
Put them on the right track if they've got the wrong ideas or they got the wrong concepts. So it's going to be very exciting in terms of crowdfunding exists right now. I mean, you do have sites like Indiegogo, Rocket Hub, Kickstarter.com that allow people to go online and raise money for their projects, their causes, even for their small businesses and their innovations. And what we did through the Jobs Act was make crowdfund investing legal. We can actually go on platforms, and it's equity-based crowdfunding
right.
as opposed to donation-based and gift-based crowdfunding. But as we talked about on the panel, there's a lot people can learn from what in the current crowdfunding space in terms of how to raise money, best practices, etc.
Yeah, there's a lot of best practices that have already occurred. As Karen said, the crowdfunding does exist today. The major legal difference, the regulatory difference is donations or gifts versus now actually being able to issue equity in the company. And of course, with issuing equity comes all of the fiduciary duties that primary shareholders owe to minority shareholders. And I think it's good discipline from a governance and transparency perspective to begin to understand, even while we're waiting for the SEC to draft the empowering regulations. One of the great suggestions on the panel that was made had to do with, doing a crowdfunding offering, even in a gift and donation mode, to gear up and practice for an equity or debt securities-based offering
right.
down the road. It could be as long as a year before some of the final regulations are in place. And so if you're thinking about crowdfunding as a funding tool, get familiar with the sites. Look at the advantages and disadvantages of the various platforms. Get comfortable with, what your disclosure is going to look like. The goal of creating an informed investor will never go away. What we have to deal with, and the reason why I think the Jobs Act passed, and the reason why you and others were successful, is the SEC had to evolve the concept of what is a pre-existing relationship, what is a friends and family style offering in a Web 2.0 internet-driven age. Back when you and I were kids, pre-internet and social networking, if you were going to issue securities to somebody, you probably knew them, you had breakfast with them. Today, our web is much bigger. The number of people who know us, who follow us on Twitter, who may be familiar with us through our Facebook postings and other things, is much wider. So the concept of who our friends and family are is wider, and we need to evolve the securities laws accordingly.
Right.
Plus, these Web 2.0 tools, as you mentioned, can form as the ultimate form of transparency. They're already serving as the ultimate form of transparency if you open a new restaurant. If you open a new restaurant, believe me, within 5 days, customers will know whether, people will know whether people are happy or not happy because of the ultimate accountability of the web. And the strategic and philosophical and regulatory issue is, can that issue of ultimate accountability also apply in the issuance of securities and crowdfunding?
Well, I think the best takeaways from that panel were the practical how-to stuff. For example, if you're interested in crowdfunding, to go to an Indiegogo, a Kickstarter, a Rocket Hub, or any of these others, and to find a project to invest in, and to actually see how it works and be on that side, of the page, if you will, as an investor to see what happens and what people may be doing right or wrong. The other is a really good piece that I took away, and I visited actually on the Indiegogo site, is a section that they have dedicated, for people who want to raise money on how to do it right. You got to have the right pitch, you got to have the right perks, you've got to have the right outreach strategy, and you've got to go to a market that cares, a market that is going to provide contributions to your cause. So there's a lot of good stuff on that in terms of, if you have a video, how much you're more likely to raise money. If you're sending out emails, you're more likely to raise money. In fact, in terms of outreach, I think email was number 1, Facebook was number 2, and Twitter was number 3 in terms of effective strategies for raising money. So the tools exist out there right now on Indiegogo where people can go to an Indiegogo, and again, look at some of their great best practices for how to use these sites, but also why not fund a project, and see how it actually works and understand the culture of these crowdfunding sites.